Imagine you're looking out your window late at night. Your neighbor's lights are on, but you haven't seen them leave. You notice a shadow moving inside, but it's not their shadow. It's too tall, too still. Now, imagine that shadow is looking back at you. Can you feel that chill?
Hello, night owls. I am Dusky Nights, and I bring you real-life horror stories that will help you sleep, or maybe keep you awake. But before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Also, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.
It's hard to explain just how unsettling it is to have someone like him living next door. The man himself is strange enough, but it's the feeling he gives off that creeps me out every single day. My family moved into this house a few years ago, and we quickly got used to the usual suburban routine. Quiet streets, kids playing, the occasional neighborly chat. But then there's the man next door. They've been living there for about 3 or 4 years now. The wife, I've never even seen her, not once. But the husband, he's a different story. He's in his late 50s or early 60s, and the best way I can describe him is creepy. He's got this long, thin, white hair that looks like it hasn't been cut in years. His face is pale, a little too thin, and he's about 30 pounds overweight. Every day without fail, he wears the same retro Bulls jacket and a pair of old slacks. I'm talking every day. The man is a walking uniform of strange. It's his routine that really gets to me. Every morning, as I head out to work, he's walking his dog, and when I get home in the afternoon, he's doing the exact same thing, walking that damn dog again. But it's not just that he's walking around the neighborhood. He seems to take a specific route, always walking right along the property line that divides our houses. And what does he do? He stares into our bay window, stares like he's studying us, watching us. One day, it got worse. I was sitting on the front porch with my brother and his 2 little kids. We were getting ready to walk to the park to play basketball when he showed up again, walking his dog like clockwork. But this time, instead of just walking by, he stopped right in front of us and started talking. It wasn't just small talk. It was strange. Weird questions rambling about things that didn't make sense. It gave off such a creepy vibe, like he was testing the waters or trying to gauge something. We tried to be polite, but we both asked him the same question. "What's your dog's name?" It seemed simple enough, right? But every time we asked, he dodged the question. He'd mumble something and then direct the conversation to my niece and nephew, who were just sitting there, confused. His behavior was so out of place, and every time we caught him in the act, he seemed a little more off, like he didn't know how to talk to anyone without making things weird. The most unsettling thing happened when my mom was outside one summer afternoon. She was in the backyard, tanning in her bikini, enjoying the sun. But then, out of nowhere, she noticed him again. This time, he was peering through a gap in the bushes that separated our properties. She wasn't sure how long he'd been standing there, watching her, but the feeling in her gut told her that it was more than just a casual glance. It didn't stop there. There's a workout room in our basement, and it has a door that opens directly into the backyard. I sometimes go out there to relax, enjoy some quiet time, and take a few hits from my bowl. One night, after I stepped outside to take a few puffs, I heard something, a noise that stopped me dead in my tracks. Whistling, but not the kind of whistling you hear from a cheerful, friendly person. No, this was slow, almost methodical, and it sent a chill through my bones. And it was so close, way too close. I froze, listening as the sound echoed in the rain-soaked night. The worst part? It was coming from his side of the yard. I didn't even wait to see who it was. I rushed back inside, slamming the door behind me and locking it with trembling hands. I checked all the other doors to make sure they were secure, but my mind kept racing. Was it him? Was it that weird old man? What the hell was he doing out there, whistling in the dark, right next to my house? But the creepiness doesn't stop there. I started noticing something strange whenever I was driving past his house. Every single time I'd leave for work or come back home, I'd catch him walking his dog along the property line. And every single time, he would stare at me. Not just a glance, no. He'd stare, his eyes never leaving mine. Even as I drove away, I'd check the rear-view mirror, and there he was, still watching. It was always the same unsettling gaze, the same silent observation, and it made my skin crawl. I don't know what's worse, the fact that he's always around, or the feeling that something more is lurking beneath the surface. Is he just a weird old man with a strange routine? Or is there something more sinister going on? I've never been able to shake the thought. Some nights, I can't help but wonder what would have happened if we hadn't caught his strange behavior, if we hadn't asked him about his dog or noticed the way he would watch us. It feels like we've been living next to someone who's never quite right, and I can't shake the feeling that one day something will happen, something that's too much to ignore. I remember the day I bought my house like it was yesterday. It was a foreclosure from HUD, and honestly, I didn't think much about the neighborhood. I was just glad to have a place of my own after everything. The house had seen better days, but it had potential, or so I thought. When I moved in, the guy across the street was the first one to come over. At first, he seemed like any other neighbor, friendly, polite, maybe a little too eager to introduce himself. He talked about the neighborhood, the weather, things like that. Nothing unusual. But it didn't take long for things to get strange. After a few weeks of chatting, he casually mentioned that he and another neighbor had been taking care of my lawn before I bought the house. He said, "We mowed your yard a few times before you moved in. Just doing our part, you know." I nodded, thanked him. But then it got weirder. He hinted at something I didn't expect. "You know," he said, leaning in a bit closer, "I've been doing all that work for you. Seems like a fair trade, huh? You could pay me back with something else. Like, maybe You know, sex? I was completely stunned. It took me a moment to process what he was saying. My brain couldn't fully comprehend the audacity of it. "What did you just say?" I asked, trying to mask my shock. But he didn't seem to notice how uncomfortable I was. "You could make it up to me, you know, some way." His grin stretched unnervingly wide. I stared at him, my mind racing. I had no idea how to respond, but I finally managed to say, "If you think you need payment for mowing the lawn, you can contact HUD. They're the ones who owned the house." His face fell, and the tension between us thickened. He awkwardly mumbled something about how it wasn't a big deal and left. I didn't say another word to him after that. From that day on, I was cautious. Every time I needed to mow my lawn, I made sure to check if he was home. I avoided going outside when he was around. If I saw him in his front yard, I wouldn't even walk to check my mailbox. I'd go out of my way to stay out of his sight. I felt trapped in my own home, always on edge when he finally moved out a year later. I can't tell you how relieved I was. I'd always try to keep my distance, but I knew I'd never feel completely safe with him knowing where I lived. And then, just when I thought I could breathe easy, the house next to mine sold. New neighbor, great. I thought maybe the fresh start would be nice. Another chance to have peace, but you know what? It's been just as bad. The guy who lives next door now isn't any better. He's quiet, but he's always lurking, always watching. It's unsettling, and I can't help but wonder, am I ever going to escape this feeling? What's it going to take for me to feel like I can actually live in peace without looking over my shoulder? I never thought much of my neighborhood. It's one of those quiet, middle-class places where everyone knows each other's names but keeps to themselves. The houses are all newer, the oldest being maybe 10 years old. It's the kind of place you'd expect nothing out of the ordinary, just a boring suburban existence. That is, until they moved in. It was supposed to be temporary, like any other new family. But from the start, something felt off about them. At first, it was small things, odd hours, strange noises at night. But the more I observed, the creepier it got. They would always do their yard work at 1 a.m., mowing the lawn under the dim streetlights, as if they didn't care who saw. And don't even get me started on the electricity. They were always stealing ours. But it was the kids that really unsettled me. One day, right in front of my eyes, their kid smashed in our mailbox. I confronted him, but all I got was a smirk, a stare that I'll never forget. He didn't even apologize. This family was toxic, the kind of people you just knew were never going to fit in. They were loud, they were rude, and they made every single day uncomfortable. For years, we tried to live with it, telling ourselves it was just a phase, that they'd move out soon enough. But then, like everything with them, it got worse. Finally, the day came. They were evicted. The cops had been called on them so many times that even the officers knew me by name. I remember one of them, a guy I'd gotten friendly with over the years, telling me to stay away from the house, but curiosity got the better of me, and he offered to let me have a look inside. big mistake. When I stepped inside, I was hit with the most revolting stench. The house was in shambles. They'd torn out every wall, stripping the house down to the studs. Every fixture was gone, every appliance was sold. I remember walking past the kitchen, just an empty shell now, and feeling that knot in my stomach grow tighter. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part, they had stopped using the bathroom altogether. The bathroom, the place meant for hygiene, had become a dumping ground. Everywhere you looked, on the floors, the walls, there were feces, piles of it. And it wasn't just there. It was all over the house, inside closets, in the hallways, even in the basement. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what I found in the closets and hallways. Corpses, dead animals, dozens of them, cats, rats, small dogs, everywhere. It looked like some kind of sick, twisted graveyard. I stood frozen, staring at the decaying bodies. I could barely breathe. These people weren't just drug addicts. They were monsters. At first I thought maybe they'd been breeding animals, these small, defenseless creatures, and something had gone wrong. Maybe the dogs had died from neglect, maybe from the meth that seemed to consume their lives. But no one should ever live in that kind of filth. I can't even begin to comprehend how they had let things go so far. One of the officers had said they'd been living without basic utilities for months, even during the summer. They hadn't bothered to pay for anything. And now, here they were, gone, leaving nothing but destruction and rot behind. As I walked away from the house that day, I couldn't shake the image of those poor, lifeless animals. I couldn't shake the feeling of how close we'd been to something much worse, something darker. We'd been living next door to them for years, and I had no idea just how bad it had gotten. Now, even though the house is empty, the neighborhood is different. I'm constantly checking my back, always aware of the people around me. The thought that something like that could happen next door, it changes the way you see the world. I try not to think about it too often, but sometimes, in the dead of night, I can almost hear the soft whistling of the wind through the trees, and I can't help but wonder if that sound is hiding something darker. When I first moved into my house, I thought it would be the start of a fresh chapter, a new home, a new life for me and my 2 kids. We'd be surrounded by friendly neighbors, a safe neighborhood. Just the kind of place I imagined raising my children. The backyard was spacious enough for the kids to run around, and it felt peaceful, quiet, until I noticed them, the house across the fence, the ones whose backyard faced ours. At first, they seemed normal, even friendly. The father would wave when he saw me, though he never said a word beyond that. His family, the mother and the 2 kids, appeared to be just like any other family in this quiet, middle-class neighborhood. But soon enough I began to notice things, small, unsettling things that made me question what was really happening in that house. It started subtly. Whenever I was outside alone with the kids, I would catch them watching us, not just glancing or passing by, but staring, standing there in their own backyard, just watching. No greeting, no conversation, just a cold, unwavering gaze. It wasn't like they were trying to hide it either. They'd position themselves just so they could watch us more clearly. The father would stand by the fence, his arms crossed, his face unreadable, as if he were making some sort of silent judgment. I thought maybe it was just my imagination at first. After all, I was a widow, raising my kids alone. It's natural to feel a little paranoid, right? But the behavior didn't stop. In fact, it escalated. The children would be told not to talk to my children. No explanations, no reasons, just a flat refusal. They weren't even allowed to play near our yard. And if I dared to get too close to the fence, their dogs, loud, aggressive, would be released to bark at us, as if the sound alone could chase us away. One afternoon, I decided to mow the lawn. It wasn't a huge yard, but big enough that it took a bit of time. The whole time I was mowing, the father just stood there, watching, not moving, not doing anything, just standing, arms folded across his chest, staring. I tried not to let it bother me. I really did. But the silence, the constant watching, it became harder to ignore. There were times when I'd be out there in my own backyard, trying to enjoy a moment of peace, when I would notice the shadow of a figure in the window, watching me. At first, I thought it was just me being paranoid. After all, I didn't have curtains in the house yet. But then it kept happening, day after day. I would catch their eyes on me, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The oddest part, their yard was always pristine. The family seemed well put together. The father would wear pressed clothes. The kids were always neat, and they were active in the neighborhood. But despite their seemingly perfect lives, they couldn't even muster a simple hello. Never any attempt to engage with me. Never a wave or a nod when I walked past. It felt deliberate, like they were deliberately keeping their distance. It was almost like I wasn't welcome in this neighborhood, in my own home. One night, I walked too close to my sliding back door, and suddenly their floodlight switched on. It blazed into my backyard, blindingly bright, illuminating the entire space. I thought it was an accident, so I went over to their yard and politely asked if they could adjust the light. Maybe dim it down a little. After all, it was shining directly into my son's bedroom. I expected a simple apology, maybe an acknowledgement. Instead, they just stood there, silent. They stared at me, said nothing, did nothing. I felt small, invisible even. I left quickly, but the weird tension lingered. A few weeks later, I was talking to another neighbor who casually mentioned something strange. Apparently, the father had been hoping to buy the house I was living in. He and his best friend from college had been planning on buying it together, but I had outbid them. That was the only explanation anyone could come up with for this strange, hostile behavior. They'd wanted this house, and I had taken it from them. It almost felt like they were punishing me, like they had every right to this house, but I had taken it from under their noses, and maybe that's why they treated me this way, why they couldn't bring themselves to speak to me. But even now, I still don't know. I don't know what their real intentions are, why they've done this. Maybe it's all just a coincidence, or maybe they're just like that, a little. Either way, I rarely spend time outside anymore. When I do, I make sure I check to see if they're out in their yard first. I don't want to see that look in his eyes again, the way he watches, the way they all watch. I still wonder what would have happened if I hadn't moved in. Would they have treated me like the other neighbors? Or was this their plan all along? I'll never know for sure, but for now, I'm stuck with the mystery of the silent neighbors next door. It's strange how some people can seem to be everywhere without you really noticing. I've been living in a dense, bustling neighborhood for a while now, and there's this one guy who stands out in a way that's hard to explain. We never really spoke much, just a brief exchange at the bus stop in the morning, sometimes in the evening. Every time I'd see him, he'd ask for a cigarette, and I would give him one. No big deal, right? People ask for smokes all the time. But it wasn't just that we happened to cross paths. It was the timing. Every day, we seemed to operate on the same schedule. Every time I caught the bus, he'd be there. At first, I thought it was coincidence. After all, it's a busy neighborhood, but it started happening too often. And when I thought about it more, I realized it wasn't a coincidence. It was like he was waiting for me. My schedule's a little unpredictable. I'm a student, and my classes are always shifting. Different times, reschedules here and there. Plus, I work odd hours whenever I feel like it. Some days, I'm in and out all day. And yet every time I'd get on or off the bus, there he was, always standing a little too close, always asking for that cigarette. I never thought much of it. I mean, who doesn't ask for a smoke now and then, right? But it was starting to feel like more than just casual coincidence. A few hours ago, I was walking home. It was past midnight. The streets were quieter than usual. I'd just finished some late work and was heading back, still thinking about the day. The neighborhood was dark, just the streetlights casting long shadows across the pavement. Then, out of nowhere, someone jumped me from behind. "Do you have a cigarette?" the voice asked, too close for comfort. I whipped around, startled, and there he was, the same guy, the one from the bus stop. I swear my heart skipped a beat. "What the hell are you doing out here?" I asked, confused. It was 2:30 a.m. Who's out looking for cigarettes at this time of night? But he didn't seem to care about my question. He just stood there, waiting. His face was shadowed, but I could see his eyes. They looked almost desperate. I hesitated, glancing around, wondering if this was some kind of joke, but his expression didn't change. It was like he didn't even notice how bizarre it was. He just kept asking, so calm, like this was normal. I handed him a cigarette. I didn't know what else to do. I was still trying to process the weirdness of it all, and frankly, I was starting to feel uncomfortable. Why was he out here? What did he want? Was this some strange habit of his, or was something deeper going on? He took it, nodded a quick thanks, and walked away into the darkness. The whole exchange left me rattled. I've seen him plenty of times, but this time felt different. Why was he walking around at this hour, in the middle of the night, looking for a cigarette? It was just a little too much, too calculated, too odd. The more I think about it, the more questions arise. What if it's not just about the cigarette? What if there's something more to his routine, something that's been creeping me out without me even realizing it? I don't know why, but I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched, that we're somehow connected in a way I can't quite understand. Maybe he's just a guy who likes cigarettes, but maybe, just maybe, there's something more going on, something I haven't seen yet. I never thought I'd be one of those people who had problems with neighbors. I've always lived in quiet places, nothing out of the ordinary. Until I moved into my current townhouse, the units are connected, but there's a 20-inch concrete firewall between mine and the neighbors, so I thought I'd be safe from any unwanted noise. That is, until she started screaming. At first, it wasn't so bad. A few loud outbursts here and there. Maybe she was just having a rough time, I thought. But then, the screams became different. The noises she made weren't just loud. They were gut-wrenching. I could hear every single one, even through that thick concrete wall. They were the kind of screams that made your blood run cold, like something out of a nightmare. And it wasn't just once in a while. It was often in the middle of the night, waking me up from a dead sleep. The first time it happened, I figured maybe it was just some sort of emotional outburst, but it didn't stop. It continued night after night. Every time I tried to sleep, her shrill, hysterical cries tore through the silence. At first, I thought I was hearing things. Was it my imagination? But no, it was real, and it was terrifying. I wasn't the only one who noticed. The neighbor on the other side of her place, he called the police a few times. I didn't know exactly what was happening, but I could hear the sirens and the muffled voices outside. It was always the same routine. Police showing up, knocking on her door, a brief exchange, and then they'd leave. Nothing ever seemed to change. No one ever got answers. I spoke with him a few times, and he said the screams sounded worse than anything he'd ever heard. The whole neighborhood could hear it, and no one knew why or what was going on. The police seemed as confused as we were. Welfare checks were called. Her family was contacted, but nothing changed. The screaming persisted. It wasn't just the screaming. There were other oddities. The way she would pace around at night, sometimes talking to herself, more like arguing with someone invisible. I'd hear the oddest, most disturbing things through the wall, like she was having conversations with someone or something who wasn't there. The more I heard, the more I felt like something wasn't right. It didn't sound like a normal breakdown. It felt off, like something darker was happening. One night, it got so bad I could hear what sounded like choking, followed by those heart-stopping screams again. It was so awful, so visceral, I was terrified. I had to cover my ears, but even then it felt like it was vibrating through the walls. I could feel it deep in my chest. That's when I realized I couldn't just ignore it anymore. I called the police myself, but when they arrived, it was the same story. A quick welfare check, a few moments of knocking, and then nothing. No answers, no changes, just the silence that followed after the police left, only for it to come back the next night. Worse. I don't know what's going on over there. Sometimes I wonder if she's possessed, or if it's something more twisted, something darker that I can't understand. I've heard horror stories about neighbors like this, but I never thought it would happen to me. It's the first time in my life I've had such a problem with a neighbor. The weird thing is, her family doesn't seem to care. They don't do anything. The police don't seem to be able to help. And I don't know what to do anymore. I can't escape the sound of her screams in the night. Every night I lie in bed, listening, waiting. The last time I heard her, it sounded like she was calling for help. But no one ever answers. I keep wondering, will I ever get any peace, or will this be my new reality, living next to whatever she's become? It was around 11 p.m. when it all started. I was 16, hanging out with some friends at a school just a couple of blocks from my place. The night was quiet, too quiet almost. We were sitting under a streetlight in the school's parking lot, the kind of place you'd never expect trouble to come from, right? We were just a bunch of kids, killing time, laughing, and enjoying the stillness of the night. But then, we noticed them, a small group of kids, probably about 10 or 11 years old, walked past the school. There was a kid who looked about our age with them. It wasn't unusual to see kids out late, but something about it felt off. It wasn't just the hour. It was the way they walked, almost too quiet, too purposeful for kids that age. They passed by, and we didn't think much of it at first. We went back to our conversation, brushing it off as another weird but normal thing that happens in quiet neighborhoods at night. But then, a few minutes later, something even stranger happened. A group of 4 or 5 guys, looked like they were around 18, came running past us. They slowed down when they saw us sitting there, and one of them yelled over, "Hey, you seen a group of kids around here?" His voice was sharp, urgent. Without thinking, we said no, and turned back to what we were doing, trying to shake off the unease that was beginning to creep into my mind. They didn't leave right away. Instead, they walked over to the school's sign, which was about 80 feet from us, and just stood there. They didn't seem like they were doing anything wrong, but the whole thing felt strange. They were acting like they were hanging out, but they didn't belong there. The longer they stood there, the more it bothered me. So, we decided to head back to my friend's house. We thought it'd be better to just go inside and lock up for the night. As we crossed the street, I noticed them again. They were still standing there, But now, they were watching us. Their eyes followed us as we made our way to my friend's house. Something about the way they stared at us sent a cold shiver down my spine. It felt like they were waiting for something. We rushed inside, locking the door behind us. That was when the real trouble began. We were just hanging out in the living room when it happened. The front door started shaking. The doorknob twisted. Like someone was trying to get in, I froze. We all looked at each other, wide-eyed, not sure if we were just imagining it. And then, bang! The sound of fists slamming against the door. I rushed to the window. Peeking through the blinds, there, on the porch, was one of the guys from earlier. He was slamming into the door as if he was trying to break it down. My heart was pounding. We had no idea where the others were, but we knew we couldn't let him in. Panic set in. We started looking around for anything we could use to defend ourselves, anything at all. One of my friends dashed to the kitchen to check the patio door, just in case the guy decided to try the back. We stood there in silence, holding our breaths. The guy at the front door backed off the porch and disappeared. We waited and waited, but nothing happened. He didn't come back. It was over. For now, I'll never know what that guy's intentions were. Why had he followed us back to my friend's house? Where were the others? Why didn't they try to break in together? We'll never have answers. But what I do know is that something didn't feel right, and it's a feeling that's stuck with me ever since. None of them ever came back. But every time I think about that night, I wonder, what if that guy had gotten in? What would have happened then?